federal government has procured 6 more attack helicopters to enhance the fight against insecurity, just as 4 more of the remaining 43 kidnapped Kaduna-bound train passengers abducted in the attack by terrorists on March 28, 2022 have been released, leaving 39 victims still in captivity. Tukur Mamu had been negotiating with the release of the victims, confirmed a new development, saying that they were released yesterday. Mamu did not give details of how they were released. He, however, gave names of the 4 people released as Gladys Brume, Oluwatoyin Ojo, Hassan Lawan, Pastor Ayodeji Oyewumi. On Sunday, a video that trended on social media showing the terrorists flogging their victims and threatening to abduct President Muhammadu Buhari and the Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, among others. Meanwhile, the families of passengers abducted on Abuja Kaduna-bound train laid siege to the Federal Ministry of Transportation in Abuja, demanding government action. Arise senior correspondent Ferdinand Duroha reports.
This video showing abducted passengers of the Abuja-Kaduna-bound AK-9 passenger train being tortured surfaced over the weekend. In the 11-minute video released by the insurgents, the male victims were separated from the women, after which they were tortured by flogging with makeshift canes. The terrorists further threatened to kill or sell their hostages if their demands are not met. It also showed the exhausted victims appealing to the international community to come to their aid, since, according to them, the Nigerian government has failed to rescue them. This is why relatives of the victims are picketing the Ministry of Transportation. The grieving protesters stopped workers from gaining access to the premises. A major cause of frustration is the outrageous sum of 100 million naira allegedly paid as ransom for some of the released victims.
We are here today to register our grievances for the government's inability to rescue our loved ones for almost 4 months now. Because the Ministry of Transport is the mother ministry that is responsible for the train services, and we paid through the NRC, we paid the Transport Ministry, our loved ones paid the Transport Ministry through the NRC to take them from Abuja to Kaduna via the train. And unfortunately, today is the 120th day that they haven't reached their destination. They're in the forest in captivity of armed terrorists.
We are here because of our loved ones that was kidnapped. For a good 4 months, nothing has been done about them. They are asking for 100 million naira, which is not an easy amount of money to come by. If they can trace Nnamdi Kanu from UK and to Kenya, they were able to track him and arrest him. We don't know why it is very difficult for them to bring these perpetrators to book that are within Nigeria and they are within the state of Kaduna State. So that is why we are here. All we want is for them to bring our loved one back to us.
Despite pleas from some of the workers, the protesters refused to give up their position and demanded to be addressed by the minister.
To bring our people to do anything with the president, with the president for the train, and the Minister of Transportation have the sole responsibility to take it to their destination. The Minister of Transportation should bring our people, and Meche the minister should bring our people. That is why we are here. And Meche, if you can hear me, bring our people. Our people are under your custody. Bring them.
Hours later, the Minister of Transportation arrives. He struggles to explain the government's predicament and assures the protesters that the authorities are doing their best in the circumstances.
Government is made up of individuals.
No, you cannot reverse this.
Like I, the permanent secretary, and so on and so forth. Each of us have families. We feel for the families of these unfortunate incidents. I have just lost a brother, and I know what it is to lose a brother.
Our sincere condolences.
Thank you. So I know exactly what you people are going through. One of the victims is also related to me, Sadiq. Sadiq, the son of Professor Abdullahi, is my cousin.
He's released.
I know. Everybody else will be released, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Now, I want to tell you, please, give me the opportunity. Let me resume in this office. This will be the first matter I'm going to tackle by the grace of God. I have asked God to guide me, to lead me in this assignment. and I know God will not fail me.
The action is coming 118 days after the Abuja-Kaduna train was attacked. Despite assurances by the government, family members say they will continue to lay siege to the ministry until their loved ones come back home. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
All right, Tundu, your take on this?
I'm just really at a loss for what to say, to be honest with you. Extremely distressing video. I don't think anybody who watches that video can actually recover from it, much as the people who actually experienced it. And to think the terrorists are accusing the federal government of really doing nothing, setting up a committee, tea drinking committee. Obviously, their thought is that there's no serious effort being made to release these Nigerians. And yesterday, we were talking in OG's segment about that story of an emir turbaning an alleged bandit. And this is exactly how terrorists do win hearts and minds of the people. Because we always sit here going, why do they get cooperation from certain communities or certain members within the communities? Well, this is why. Because they peddle this story of the federal government don't care about you, the people. And really, from what we've been shown, it's really difficult to disagree with that. Why have those people not been released? People that have been released so far, including this new tranche, this is the third tranche of the lucky few that have been released, is because their families were able to raise 100 million naira. There was the first initial gentleman who was released, and the next 8, and this is how long it has taken the families of these 4 people. And some families, it could take them 10 years to try and raise 100 million. And note that there are certain families that have more than one member who were abducted. Some family members traveling together, entire families. What are those families going to do? And it's going to take them so long. And while they're waiting to raise the money or attempting to raise the money, all that is happening is that the terrorists are getting increasingly angry and taking out their frustrations on these innocent Nigerians. It's extremely worrying. They need to get out of there right now. And the fact that a Nigerian can stand in this situation, that gentleman who was calling for help from Saudi Arabia, from the United Kingdom, from America, from anybody else, he's also given up hope in his own federal government. We now have the new Minister of Transport, Mr. Sambo, saying that as soon as he gets in there, this is the first thing I'm going to do. What on earth does that mean? What does that mean? But I also wonder, is the Ministry of Transport the right place to picket? The families have been consistently picketing the Ministry of Transport since this nightmare unfolded, because obviously the trains on which this disaster happened were procured by the Ministry of Transport. But this is also a security issue. It's a security issue, and it could be anybody. So the roads are not safe. People that get abducted on the roads, do they go and picket what, the Ministry of Works? People who get abducted in their school, do you go and picket the Ministry of Education? We now live in a country where we're discussing where is the appropriate government authority to picket in the event that you or your wards are kidnapped. This is how low we have come. A lot of people have asked me, and I have to confess, the thought has crossed my mind, why don't media outlets try and raise money for these people just to get them out? But of course we cannot do that. Are we going to now we have a sovereign wealth fund in Nigeria. Are we now going to set up a Kidnap trust fund so that the national government can pay off 100 million a pop for all of us? This is how bad things are. It's ridiculous. And nothing is changing. Nothing is working. Something has to be done before they do make good on their promises to start killing people.
Dr. Abati?
Well, the terrorists have said that they will abduct the governor of Kaduna State, they will abduct the president. And yesterday I was saying on this program that this is an indication of audacity, of recklessness, of the confidence. We don't know where it's coming from, that these terrorists, these criminals have adopted in this matter. But yesterday, after flogging their victims, which I thought was the lowest of the low in terms of the denigration of human dignity, we now heard that 4 persons have been released. Those 4 persons, okay, they probably paid ransom. But there are still over 30 persons in the custody of these terrorists. We call on the Nigerian government to see what can be done, what is possible to make sure that those other persons are freed. The government says, oh, we don't pay ransom, we are not involved in the ransom game. But, well, we're talking here about human lives. And government has an obligation under the Constitution, Section 14, subsection 1, as has been repeatedly pointed out on this program, to ensure the security and welfare of all persons. Yesterday also, we took exception to the statement that was issued by Garuba Shehu on behalf of the presidency or the federal government, saying that, look, yeah, this is how terrorists behave anyway, and in any case, the media should stop promoting terror. Journalists should work to support the government. Other stakeholders in society should support government. Well, we're giving the support. But nobody is convinced, as Garuba Shehu claimed, that the president is doing more than what he is required to do. No, if he's doing more than what he is required to do, there will be nobody in the custody of kidnappers. There will be nobody that will be flogged, for not committing any offense. There will be nobody, no family, that will have to go through agony, horror, frustration, and having to pay ransom to be able to get their beloved ones to enjoy constitutionally guaranteed rights. As for the families that went to the Ministry of Transport to protest, well, I thought I had one gentleman saying, well, the only crime, the only offense, perhaps, let's use a milder word, that their family members have committed was going onto a Nigerian train, trying to travel from Abuja to Kaduna. Now, in other parts of the world, that would not constitute a problem. But we find ourselves as Nigerians in a dangerous zone. We are on a daily basis Nigerianized. And to be Nigerianized is to find yourself in a very difficult situation. So, whether it is the Ministry of Transport that they chose, or the Ministry of Labor, or even the frontage of the villa itself, or even any location in any part of Nigeria, they have every right to express their grievance and to protest and to express the view that something has gone terribly wrong with this country. Now, about 30 or more persons are still in the custody of these terrorists. The Nigerian government still owes us an obligation to ensure their release, to give us peace. This is not the first time this has happened. It happened in Chibok, it happened in Jangebe, it happened in other places. Wherever you are in Nigeria, either you are traveling by road, by air, or by train, you are not safe. President Muhammadu Buhari should personally take this as a comment on his legacy. He's in the legacy zone now. His strategists, if they know their work, by now should be trying to construct his legacy. But this will be a major blight on that legacy, whichever way they construct it. Namely, that under President Muhammadu Buhari's watch, he is promised that he will address the challenge of insecurity in the country. He was unable to deliver underscore. In other words, it will be said hereafter, when the commentariat puts the account together, that he failed woefully in that regard. And he and his supporters will not be able to blame Russia and Ukraine for that, because on the economy, it's convenient to say, oh, COVID happened, Ukraine happened, and all of that. But in terms of security, you cannot blame the Russians, you cannot blame Ukraine. So whatever can be done to make sure that at least these concerned families feel their agony, we empathize with them, are given the opportunity to smile again in a country where not too many people are smiling. Even the politicians are frowning. We hope that will happen and that the president will be able to do this as his government begins to wind down.
Well, I just want to say I did not in any way suggest that they don't have the right to protest. But we live in a country now where you have to start wondering about kidnap protocols. If you get kidnapped, who's going to pay your ransom? What is the proper protocol? It has to now be a thought that we all have, because it could literally be anybody. That is the point. That is where we find ourselves.
And that's the sad reality, Tunda, about the country we're now living. I had to take a journey recently, and I've been taking these trips for a couple of days now. And for the life of me, I started thinking in my head, if I'm kidnapped now, what will happen?
Everybody thinks it.
And I resorted to a point in my head that said, you know, it will be a lot of pain for people that are close to me. And you don't want them to go through that pain. And that's the country we live in now. Secondly, we keep spending a lot on military infrastructure and nothing has been done. That's the part that saddens me the most. So I'll ask, is it that we don't have any special units or an elite force that can go in there, track down this bandit with just AK-47 and be able to attack them? On this same Nigerian shores that we say it's not possible to track down the bandit, the Americans came. They have one America just on the border with Niger that was I think, apprehended by these bandits. And they came in and they did a good job. They partnered with Nigerian intelligence and they flushed them out and they rescued the Americans. So is it that Nigeria cannot do that as a country? We just bought T-129s. T-129s are, you know, attack helicopters for the kind of regions we have. One will set you back about 50 million US. So if they say we bought 6, we just expend another 300 million US on T-129s. What has been the effects? You know, what will be the effects? Or what has been the effect of the Super Tucanos that we took money that was supposed to be our rainy day fund for? I mean, those are the questions we should ask. And the problem is that there's massive level of incompetence here and there. The fact that it is an independent party that even does the negotiation between government and the bandits in the first place, and we can't get to the root of this matter, is more shocking for us as a nation. You raised a very good point that where even they're going to picket. They are picketing now the transport ministry.
He's saying when I get to the job, when I start the job.
Why they are doing that? Because that's the one that is safe for them. Because I'm sure if they go in front of the Ministry of Defense, you might know the implications in Nigeria. You know, before you know it, we just hear that some bullets were shot in the air and people were attacked. So that's the kind of country we live in. It's a country that have no regard for its citizens. And I keep quoting Dwight Eisenhower by saying that a country that values privilege over virtue will soon lose the privilege and the virtue. And that's where Nigeria is as a country. People are just in power because they value the privilege of being in power. It's not the virtue of doing the good work for the people. A lot of people just want to be president because they want to be called Mr. President of Nigeria. Not because they want to get down and do the dirty work of being president. A lot of people want to be Mr. Minister so that they will just be called Mr. Minister and they will get the title ex-minister. Not that they want to get out there and do the hard work of being a minister and administering that ministry properly. Because we all know what even causes kidnapping in the first place. We all know how corruption and lack of accountability in our system caused us not to be able to install surveillance equipment on that train track in the first place. We all know how we're going back and forth as regards that contract. And Minister Mechi then, when he was in power, came out to say that, oh, I sent the contract, but Ministry of Finance didn't honor it. And Ministry of Finance came back in turn to say, oh, we wanted to honor it, but the company that was pushing the contract was quite very unscrupulous and things like that.
The Federal Executive Council.
The Federal Executive Council. So we all know what happened. Nigeria has been a litany of woes because people make it happen. So the reason why Nigeria is failing in terms of insecurity is because the leadership has not done a lot as regards insecurity. I just pray a miracle happens, because you see, when something defies logic, you pray for a miracle. And that's the kind of country we've built. Moving on to the next story, a United Kingdom-based doctor, Obin Albetta, has been accused of conniving with the former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu, who is facing trial in the country. However, Beatrice Ekweremadu has been granted bail by a court in the UK, but her husband Ike Ekweremadu is still in custody. Beatrice is charged with arranging or facilitating travel of another person with a view to exploiting under the Modern Slavery Act of 2015. Meanwhile, the former Deputy Senate President is charged with conspiracy to arrange or facilitate travel of another person with a view to exploitation, namely organ harvesting. The couple were arrested at Heathrow Airport on June 21st after arriving on a flight from Turkey. Tundu?
Yes, the difference in the charges is that element of conspiracy that's present in Senator Ike Ekweremadu's charges, but not in his wife's. So she's been granted bail, according to the judge, under stringent conditions, which she will not disclose. This is according to the judge. But I guess that's wonderful news for her, because she hasn't seen, well, daylight since June 23rd, when they were arrested. Bail has been denied, so now at least she gets to go home. Their next trial date is on the 4th of August at the Old Bailey. Now we have this interesting development with this Dr. Obinna Obeta from Southwark, South London, who's also been charged. And I guess all we can just hope is for a speedy and fair dispensation of justice. I just hope the truth will out in this case, and that the Ekwere Madus get their day in court. And, justice is done for all concerned, including the person who is making the allegations, a 21-year-old alleging that he was taken to England for organ donation, and especially their daughter, who is the person who needed the organ in the first case.
Dr. Basi?
Whichever way you look at it, it's very bad. That the Madam Beatrice Ekwere Madu has been granted bail does not necessarily translate into any silver lining or cause for jubilation. If you look at the case, the way it is going, it keeps getting complicated, at every turn. Obeta, the doctor from the 50-year-old doctor from Southwark, South London, has been brought into the case. We don't know what else, the prosecutors will come up with. But whatever it is, it looks really bad, and I will urge, persons who are friends of the Ekwere Madus to just be engage in prayers to see how this can end, one way or the other, not in a tragic sense. In all of this, we also remember the young lady whose circumstances triggered all of this, kidney transplant, kidney donation, and all of that. And there are many experts who have said that perhaps, maybe there's also something here about families seeking, medical help abroad, medical tourism. Whereas, this is something that could have been done here in Nigeria. I've had persons say even public hospitals in Nigeria could have done, the organ transplant and there will be no complications. Private hospitals here that could have done the same. But when families are faced with distress, with issues relating to family health, you never know the kind of choices that persons can make within the scope of their own capacity. But whatever it is, I feel for the Ekwere Madus. This is really a very tragic thing for a man who had risen all the way to the top, and then at the very top of his career within the public space, for this to happen at the family level. So from that humanistic point of view, yes, we can continue to monitor the details, comment on the details, but at the end of the day, what we are reminded of, all of us, is how vulnerable we are as human beings and how life is such a complex proposition, at both the individual, family, collective, communal level. But let's see how this plays out.
Right. We'll just maintain the point that the case is in court. We'll see how the legal process pans out. Justice should be done across board. And we can only wish the girl that is in the middle of all of this storm, the girl that needs a kidney, that is fighting for her life, we wish her well, wish her recovery. And we can just only wish for justice to be done and wish for everybody that is involved, to recover fully quickly. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotus, we have Michael to give us updates on Africa global business. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Moving on to business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. It's, as you can imagine, a bit of a waiting game, really, as far as the Asian markets are concerned. Waiting ahead of the Fed, the announcement about their interest rate rise, which most people are thinking will be 0.75% tomorrow, and also generally looking at the way that the world is creeping towards a recession. However, some brighter news from South Korea. Gross domestic products beat estimates, up 0.7%, was unexpected. And there's a sort of feeling there that there may well be a rise in interest rates in South Korea. Bank of Japan released its minutes from its June meeting. It kept its interest rates at ultra low levels last week, as expected. Hong Kong's Hang Seng advanced 1.8%. Alibaba up 6%. It's going to apply for primary listing on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And if that's actually completed, then it will be a dual primary listed company in Hong Kong and New York. That's expected to happen before the end of this year. I'll have just a little bit more on Alibaba in a second. Mainland China stocks also climbed slightly. The Shanghai Composite up about 1%. The real question about China that investors are asking themselves is, can it boost? Is it possible within its kind of command economy to boost growth drivers like consumption while controlling the fallout, which is bound to be, as we were talking about yesterday, from the real estate, the property industry? Okay. Back to Alibaba, and it's scaling back its global ambitions. What it wanted to do was to become a bit like Amazon, but it's, in other words, being a business-to-business junction, really, I suppose, for small businesses to get together. It certainly happened in the United States as far as Amazon concerned. It wanted to get 1 million local businesses. It hasn't happened. And Amazon's done that for wholesalers, but it doesn't seem to be working for Alibaba, so they're scaling their global ambitions back a bit. India's 5G auction kicks off today. Now, the bidders in this are interesting. First of all, the ones you'd expect, the major ones, which is Reliance Jio, which is the market leader, Bharti Airtel and Vodafone. And then there is a surprise entry from the Indian billionaire Gautam Adani. A total of 72 gigahertz of 5G will be on the block. Four bidders have put up $2.7 billion. The prize is the 500 million of subscriptions by the end of 2027, which is actually what they're working towards. As far as the United States is concerned, stock futures really fell because after the bell yesterday, we got this crucial report from Walmart, which has in fact actually cut its forward-looking forecast as inflation has apparently hit consumer spending. You can understand why a company like that is actually front and center of where people actually think of where the US economy is going. Food inflation, that's alarmed, and that alarmed investors, and also big implications for other retail stocks as well. And the shares actually down about 9% in extended trading. GDP today, question of whether the economy is in recession will be on everybody's mind. The Fed tomorrow, the economy, well, most people think it stands a fair chance of actually achieving this, if you can put it like that, this sort of quarter-on-quarter fall, which tends to signal a recession. That's the big question. That's one of the big questions. The other really big question is, what effect will this have on the dollar? And that has effect for every economy around the world that is indebted to in dollars. Top Gun Maverick nears $1.3 billion worldwide. It could become the first $1 billion movie in Tom Cruise's 40 years. 40 years is long, isn't that? And I guess, do you know what the highest grossing movie of US history is? You don't. Star Wars: The Force Awakens, 936.6 million.
Of course it is.
That's right. So far, good. Glad you got it. You win a big cigar, which I would look forward to presenting you in person, or whatever is your equivalent to that. Okay, let's move on. Russia has cut the Nord Stream gas supply again. It's down to about a fifth now. It was already lowered after they had come back after this supposed maintenance period, down to 40%. It's now down to 10%. German business confidence has fallen to its lowest in 2 years. That economy is clearly teetering on the brink of recession, and the majority of Europe does not believe that Russia's excuses for this are for technical reasons. It's seen much more as retaliation. I don't know whether you caught it last night. I mean, some of you probably had better things to do. I hope you did, because the battle to become the new Prime Minister of the UK gets much more acrimonious. They were talking on television last night, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Fiercest clash yet over taxes and China. Sunak called plans to cut taxes like a sugar rush, and he reckoned there'd be 7% interest rates here, not supported by any economists apart from one whom I know him quite well, actually, but he's a bit of a maverick. Truss said that Sunak's tax increases would force the UK into recession. I mean, we're into that sort of level now of insults, and plenty more to come. UK must do to help consumers more with energy bills. Very influential business committee of MPs were saying that the 15 billion plans for support has already been eclipsed by the crisis. You can expect a bit more debate on that. Financial from the help for the needy needs to be helped. About a fifth of the population will be in what they call poverty, energy poverty, by the end of the year. And Ofgem, which is the regulator, has been criticised by the MPs being not fit for purpose. As far as Amazon is concerned, now we talked about the way in which these big streamers, these big wholesalers, these big online retailers are putting up prices, and it's going to put its Prime service up by £1 in the UK. Prime services, which offer unlimited delivery of products and entertainment streaming services. And basically, just back to the oil price, very, very briefly, because of that cut in the Nord Stream thing, the feel that Russia is very happy to weaponize its energy supplies, and that's tended to lift oil prices a little in Asia. That is the global view.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I was confident about Star Wars because it is the greatest story ever told cinematically, hands down, quite frankly. I'm thrilled for Tom Cruise because that is like the big movie star of a whole generation. Like you said, his career has spanned 40 years, and he's right up there, especially with the kind of action fare that he likes to churn out, the Top Gun, Jack Reacher, Mission Impossible. He doesn't disappoint, and this Maverick was excellent. And I don't know if you watched the first one, but I actually wondered if it could match it, and it did. I thought it was really, really good. And I do feel the need for speed. That's a quote from Top Gun. Now, with regards to the debate, what I found most disappointing of all was I thought that Rishi Sunak was a lot more, I'm trying to find a polite word, which is a lot more than he did for Liz Truss. I found him really just dripping with condescension towards her at times, sort of hectoring. It looked bad. It wasn't quite as bad as a car crash that was Donald Trump's debate with Hillary Clinton. But for me to even be making that comparison, I never thought I'd see the day with Rishi Sunak. And it's also funny how just across the world, even in Nigeria here, I think even more so in Nigeria, privilege in politics is such a dirty word. Here, we tend to gravitate or relate, well, most people in this country will relate to candidates with their hard luck stories of having no shoes and what have you. And when that came up in this debate with Liz Truss talking about her comp education and talking about Rishi's, privilege. He was very quick to correct her and talk about how his parents struggled. It's extremely important to connect to the voters and not make them feel like he looked down on them, which has always been a problem with Rishi Sunak and some of his posh, moneyed credentials. But in terms of the actual meat of it, although we all pretend that it's all about the big issues, not always. Sometimes it's about even the chemistry, the interplay, and some of the subtle jabs that show you the character of the person that you're dealing with. But in terms of the meat of the issue, on that tax cuts issue, I want to know your thoughts. Rishi Sunak talks, like you said, about that sugar rush. Is he right, or will it boost growth? Which one of them is correct? Because they're so convincing when they argue their case.
Well, if you listen to economists, I mean, Rishi Sunak's right. If you listen to what if you want the sugar rush, then Liz Truss is right. I still feel that I'm not exactly sure about whether cutting taxes is not the way forward, because if you make an economy burdensome, then you just stop people spending altogether. And of course, you don't want to do that. You want to give them a little bit of wiggle room, and things are going to get very tough here, I think, as we approach the winter. I did say to you when we talked about this yesterday, I got no idea that they would go at each other in the way that they did. What else do they do? I mean, it seems to me that the tail is wagging the dog here. I don't want to see people shouting at each other. I'd like to see reasoned arguments set down that I can process myself. I don't need to see them shouting at each other. However, you have a very good point, which is this. I think that, you're talking about the way in which these people actually come forward. They are, after all, the leaders of a cabinet, or will be. One of them will be a leader of a cabinet. And how they perform within those meetings and how successful they are and how they rub shoulders on the world stage is incredibly important. You're absolutely right. So from that point of view, I think personality has a lot to go with. I don't think that Liz Truss is Margaret Thatcher by any stretch of the imagination. I was talking to somebody yesterday who used to work in the same office when she was Prime Minister. He was a very, very lowly figure in that office. but he said that Liz Truss is nothing like Margaret Thatcher, and there's no point in her claiming to be, and commentators are actually saying she is wrong. Rishi Sunak's problem, again, as you quite rightly identify, is the fact that however he's seen to be, however hard luck his story is, he's a very, very rich man. And I mean, that does just not go down with voters. I feel, I'm with you on that. I feel that MPs, that prime ministers should be, in effect, walking the shop floor as good managing directors, as good corporate directors do as well. They need to keep in touch with the people. I don't believe either of these two are.
Well, two quick things, Michael. The first one, Liz Truss was comparing Rishi Sunak to Gordon Brown. I was so excited hearing Gordon Brown. I mean, what is that comparison all about? Recession, yes, tax, and all of that. Okay. But the other part of it is that group saying, bring back Boris. And, Lord Krudas saying that, in fact, Boris Johnson does not want to go. And that there have been about 10,000 signatures saying that Boris Johnson should stay because he doesn't want to go. Is that anything that anybody should be worried about? Because there are people now saying he should be on the ballot by September 5 or before September 5 for the Tories to decide whether they want to keep him. And then Nord Stream. Zelensky has been saying that, look, Russia is waging a gas war. There is gas blackmail and all of that. Yeah, about a week earlier, the EU Commission said that the countries in Europe should be prepared to at least cut off about 15% of their gas consumption. Tomorrow, energy ministers of the European countries are going to meet to look at options. What options are before them? Now that in terms of capacity, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been cut down to just about 20%, and it could get worse. And the fear is that Russia really wants to just knock down everything.
Yeah, okay, let's do Gordon Brown first of all. I don't think anybody could compare with Gordon Brown, what he believed. I mean, the irony of Gordon Brown is that he grew up, and there is a statue in Cowdenbeath where he grew up, in his constituency, just north of the Firth of Forth, and there is a statue which is Adam Smith. Adam Smith, as you know, was the founder of capitalism. And yet, Gordon Brown, when he was Chancellor, and then when he was quarrelling with Tony Blair, and then became Prime Minister, was the one Chancellor that raised taxes, that reduced tax advantages, but also thought that taxes were the way to social reform. I just simply don't think they are. But that was his point of view. I don't think Rishi Sunak's like that at all. I think his background is completely different. That's the comparison that Liz Truss is trying to make. I don't think the two see things at all. Just because the tax burden has risen, Sunak is saying he's doing out of being sensible about things. Gordon Brown's prudence I just thought was all over the place. I mean, the Labour Party was perfectly happy to redefine even where the financial circle began and ended. When I was business editor, I was at the television station I was working for. We had to contend with this in every budget, and actually saying, what is the truth about this? What does the medium term actually mean? What does the long term actually mean? Where is the trajectory of the economy going right now? And all these kind of questions. And in one of them, in one budget, when he raised national insurance, it wasn't even mentioned in the speech. We had to go to something called the Red Book afterwards, where everything was laid out. So I don't think there's any comparison at all. As far as Russia's concerned, well, this is going to be very interesting, isn't it? So what's happening is, as I was saying yesterday, a lot of the countries, including Spain, Italy, and Portugal, within the EU, are saying, hang on a second. But we've been prudent about our gas. We're not like Germany. We didn't vote to get rid of nuclear power like Germany did. Not that they had it in the first place, but certainly France does. We didn't place all our eggs in one basket. So why should we be supporting Germany in this? I mean, these these cracks are really developing within the European Union, and no question, this is perfectly within Putin's playbook. Of course, he saw this. Of course, he saw this coming. It doesn't really genius, does it? To see if you starve off one major economy, the others are going to say, "But hang on a second, we're in the European Union." The next thing is, but hang on a second, we were prudent and you weren't. You put all your eggs in one basket. Okay. So just to finish on that, I think what I'd additionally say is what I said yesterday was, I think what we're going to see is a lot of discussion between the members of the 27 countries of the EU saying, okay, can we make the best of what we have at the moment without depending on Russia? So it's going to be really interesting.
Okay, Michael, I mean, I had a lot to say about the debate, but maybe I'll keep that for tomorrow. But real quickly, the EU, the Eurozone, is hurting up as regards inflation. The numbers are coming home to roost. The ECB doesn't seem to have a good idea of how to tackle this. Yes, there's a fight back by Madame Lagarde as regards stemming the tide of inflation, but it's eating the EU up. I mean, what's supposed to be the reaction? And also the same case in America. Inflation, inflation, inflation. And we're seeing this cascading effect on the world economy in general across the pond. But nobody seems to be doing anything as regards it. Maybe the Americans are faring better, but the Eurozone, I don't think they've ever had this level of inflation in a while.
The euros. I mean, I can't speak for I personally, you're asking me what I think about the eurozone. I find it incredible all these different economies are yoked together. But I mean, from what we hear from the eurozone, yes, it's difficult for them to raise interest rates. They're going about it. Madame Lagarde is saying this is a form of gradualization. What she's also doing, if you remember from Thursday at that meeting, what they also said was they would have this a sort of fragmentation fund. In other words, to pay particular account to those countries which have an enormous debt to GDP ratio, namely, for example, and quite timely, of course, Italy. So I think it's going to be extremely complicated for them to do this, but they are guarding against it. If the Fed continues to raise interest rates, as I was saying, we're going to be facing this really, and they will. I mean, there's no question it's going to be 0.75% at least tomorrow. But you're seeing the whole country teetering towards recession. Now, the real question, not so much inflation, that's one thing, is the strength of the dollar. What will it do to that? If the dollar were to weaken, then my suggestion is that would be no bad thing. And there'll be a lot of countries who would actually quite like that, because it would mean that their debt was less expensive. So again, all to play for. I can't answer your question directly, but those are the kind of things that as a journalist I'd be looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now, our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, lots to get into on the African side. We begin with the amount of money that's being spent on foreign education. According to the CBN's FX utilization report, it published this publicly. You see it in all the newspapers, all the columns, and so on and so forth. About $378 million has been spent by Nigerians between January and May on foreign education. If we take a look at some of the numbers so far year to date, January through May. So January, about 60 million was spent. February was 69.9. March was 87.2. April, 78 million. And in May, 82.7. Now, the thing is, this figure could actually be higher. If you remember, I think it was late last year or so, where we talked about a report from Nairametrics that showed that Nigerians spent about $28 billion on education, foreign education, over 10 years, between 2010 and 2020. That 28 billion works out to 2.8 billion a year. That 2.8 billion a year works out to about $233 million a month. So if you take that $233 million in 1 month on average from 2010 to 2020 and compare that to 378 million over 5 months, you can see that the issue of illiquidity and lack of access to foreign exchange is part of why this number is probably lower than it should be. Personally spoken to parents who haven't been able to access FX because from their banks, and we know about what the situation is with FX illiquidity. So that's something to regard. But then you look at these numbers and you think about what it means for the pressure on the currency. all this money is flowing out, nothing's flowing back in. And then, of course, you look at the situation with the public universities and what's going on there, the ASU strikes. Can't blame any parent who would want to get their child out and educate them overseas. So we're going to be looking at this number over the rest of the year to see how things play out there. The Kwara state government, still on education, they've signed, and that's the governor, Abdul Assad, they've signed a deal, minimum wage deal, with tertiary institutions to implement the 30,000 naira minimum wage and ensure that they will be paid. Two interesting quotes from the head of service. I think it's Modupe Oluwole, if I'm correct. Yeah, is it Modupe Oluwole, excuse me. Everyone knows the situation of things in the country. Many states in the country are finding it very difficult to pay necessary wages, including Kwara. But His Excellency Malam Abdul Rahman Abdul Razak has made the payment of salaries the first line charge to ensure that all salaries are paid as at when due. Now take a look at this second quote. She couched something in the middle here. Governor Abdul Razak recognizes the fact that workers are key and they need their pay, and he is doing all he can to ensure that workers get paid. Now that's the first part. Look at this second part. Almost everything that comes to Kwara states goes to payment of salaries. And then she ends it with, we have states that are counting months of unpaid salaries, but the situation is like that in Kwara. It's almost like a microcosm of Nigeria as it is. The exports go to the NEPC, Export Promotion Council. They're excited about the domestic export warehouses, which are supposed to support the RT200 scheme, which is supposed to bring in $200 billion in non-oil exports over the next 3 to 5 years. So these dedicated warehouses are supposed to fast-track logistics, fast-track storage, fast-track access to ports in order to assist these RT200 beneficiaries, that is the exporters who are non-oil exporters, in getting those goods out of the country as quickly as possible. The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement also plays in here. So yeah, they're bullish on that, and well, we'll just have to see how things go with respect to that. Bismarck Rawane, we all know who he is. He was speaking to, I think it was The Punch by telephone, and he was saying that between diesel costs and FX pressure, a number of businesses could possibly collapse. He talked about, again, lack of FX availability, the high price, the fact that the parallel market is where a lot of businesses are going to access FX. Diesel is up. The grid keeps collapsing, so there's lack of power to begin with, and then you combine that with the fact that your other alternative means of generating power, you have a 300% rise in cost. So margins are just being, and look at the aviation sector, look at what's happening. And then he has this sarcastic tweets, but there's a lot in this tweet. Eniola Akinkotu is a journalist. He says, don't change that $1,000 in your hand for $650,000, please. Change it at the official rates of $425. Don't compromise your nation's economy because of a mere 225,000 naira difference. Change begins with me. It's a lot of sarcasm here, but when you think about foreign investors who are not participating in Nigeria's equities markets because of the fact that there's an issue with repatriating funds, when you think about the fact that foreign direct investments, besides insecurity and all those other things, the proper pricing of their securities has kept, the bond market, the stock market, this quotes that we're looking at encapsulates all of those issues. In fact, that a foreign investor is not going to bring their funds in when you've got that massive premium. So it's like, what should I be pricing my dollars at? So as sarcastic as it is, it does point to a number of issues that we're facing here, including the temptation to round trip and the temptation to go to the parallel market. In fact, that's 650. That's at 650 naira per dollar. As of yesterday, it was now 670. So that it just keeps climbing. Finally, Ghana surprised the markets yesterday by holding their benchmark interest rates at 19%. That's Governor Dr. Ernest Addison, the governor of the Central Bank of Ghana. And, well, I expected them to raise rates. But here's something very interesting. An analyst pointed this out to me from Accra. Ghana's month-on-month inflation is actually decelerating. The blue line is their year-on-year inflation. You can see, and in fact, last year it was single digits. So 13.9%, this is January through June, all the way up to 29.8%. That's the consumer price index. The producer price index is at 38%. That's the cost for producers. However, You look at the orange line, month-on-month inflation from April has been decelerating to 4% in May and 3% in June, which is, I guess, it caused the bank to take, I guess, an accommodative stance and say, okay, look, if month-on-month, which is more technically accurate since it's a closer metric that you're tracking month-on-month as opposed to year-on-year, is why they held the rates. Also, there's some optimism coming up for Ghana, and explain why. One, the parliaments, hung parliaments that trades blows every time, they approved a $750 million loan from the Afri-Exim Bank. It's part of a $1 billion facility that they want to use to shore up their budget and give the Bank of Ghana firepower to defend the currency. There's also talks with the IMF to hopefully get between $1 to $1.5 billion. So you put all that together, month-on-month inflation decelerating, all this money that's coming in, hopefully, Ghana's looking up, possibly.
And another thing
cautious optimism.
Okay, Dr. Batu, you want to go first? You can.
No, go ahead.
And what Ghana is also doing is that Ghana has learned discipline the hard way.
Yep.
They've cut out all excesses, because when you look at Ghana, I think Ghana joined the IMF in about 57. When they joined the IMF, between 57 and now, they have gone to the IMF at least averagely 4 years, every 4 years. So they've done like 17 times going to the IMF.
Yep.
And they've learned the lesson the hard way. So because of what they're cutting now, there's been some level of physical discipline in Ghana. And when you look at those numbers tending downwards, now they want to take the money they'll get from the IMF with the loan they're getting and tighten up things for themselves and give themselves some leverage. And this goes back to the point I was making when we increase interest rates, that I don't think it was a good idea by the CBN to increase interest rates, because you need to know what is causing inflation in the first place.
Right.
And when you look at other parameters and it looks in the direction that it might be transitory and month-to-month numbers are tending downwards, you can really just keep an accommodative stand, because once you increase the interest rate, it will also stifle the liquidity in the market.
Right.
And the increase in interest rate in Nigeria's case is not a problem of that liquidity. It's because of the legacy problems we have, the logistical challenges, and that's why you see cost of doing business, food push and things like that. You can't get insecurity and all of those problems. So Ghana is taking the best way forward. But the question is, will they sustain it?
Right, that's the question.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Because they were here 4 years ago. They went to the IMF. Now they're here again. They fought so hard not to go, but hope they'll learn the lessons. And when you also come back to Nigeria, what is happening? It just shows that the states are not productive centers.
States are in trouble.
Begging for the federal government to be able to pay your salaries.
Right.
It's just a no-no.
It's not productive
So
at
the
all.
question is, what is even the productivity of the members of the civil service you're paying their salaries? How are they bringing some money? So I think we need to have a renewed approach, and that's why we keep calling for devolution of power. States need to be able to pay their bills. We need to wean them off this national feeding bottle called FAC, or else they will not learn and they will not grow. It will be tough a bit, but trust me, if you win them off and they know there is nothing to look forward to Abuja, you will see that a lot of these governors will stop going to Abuja. They will sit back at home and make their states work. It can actually work, but when you put people in the deep end, and I keep citing Singapore. When Singapore knew that Malaysia was not going to pay their bills any longer, was going to leave them in the cold.
Tightened up.
They tightened up and they fixed things. And Lee Kuan Yew listened to the advice of Dr. Weisselmans, and you can see how Singapore had grown over the years.
You quoted the CEO, founder of financial derivatives, Bismarck Rawane, saying that many businesses will collapse because of the high cost of power and diesel.
Yeah.
Well, that's in your face, no-brainer, reality. Look at the situation in this country. This same government talked about the ease of doing business, but that has not worked. A whole department was even created in that regard. But what has happened? What is the reality that we have? The cost of diesel has gone up by about 300%. Aviation fuel has gone up. The grid is collapsing on a daily basis, as it were. Last week, it collapsed 3 times within 3 hours. A country of over 200 million people having zero, supply of electricity. Access to forex is a problem. It's one of the things that the players in the aviation sector are complaining about. So how will businesses thrive under such a context? But the question to ask, which was raised in the reports, is that what is the government doing about it? Now, we can maybe begin to excuse the Buhari government. It's already a lame duck administration with just about 6 months to go. I don't think anybody cares. Even their spokespersons are saying, well, I'm not one of them. I'm just here to do a job. Okay? So everybody is potting out of the business. But what would the next administration do about this, about the situation in which we have found ourselves? That, for me, would be the question in that regard. And then I saw, you said 2.8 billion being spent annually on foreign education.
378 million for 5 months. 378 million.
In 5 months? No, that's in dollars.
In dollars,
but you said 2.8 billion naira.
No, that was dollars. That was the 10 years.
That's also dollars.
Yeah, that was 28 billion over 10 years, which comes to 2.8 billion.
Should anybody be surprised? The education sector in Nigeria is down and out. Since February, universities have been shut down. Even when they are not shut down, many parents are not very sure of the quality of education that their children will receive. Well, the private universities are there, but even the private universities, you really cannot be too sure of what is going on. So you find families, civil servants, all, scrounging to send their children abroad. But the painful part of this is that these children that we send abroad, very soon, many of us will end up without our children around us. Because when they go abroad, they receive that education. They come back home, they do, what do they call it now? National Youth Service. After youth service, they will say, Daddy, I want to do masters. They go and do the masters, they say, I'm not coming back. I'm staying here. And, you are not in a position to force them to come back to a country that does not take care of anybody. And yet, once upon a time, and here lies the tragedy, people used to come from Botswana, from South Africa, to come and receive quality education in Nigeria, where some of those people were sponsored by the Nigerian government, and some of us did not like them. Because they will spend Nigerian money, they will get drunk, they will chase Nigerian girls, and they will be falling down from the first floor of the hostel. But Nigeria was so attractive then that people came from everywhere and they came here to study. Who wants to come and study in Nigeria today? Many of my classmates, if any will confirm this, came from Cameroon. They came from Republic of Congo to come and study in Nigeria and receive quality education. Some of them went to become big men in Cameroon and in other countries. Who wants to come to Nigeria to come and receive education? When you see the reality, it is a comment on how Nigeria has turned out. Wait for September and October. You see lorry loads, plane loads of Nigerian children leaving to go and stay in England, Canada, Australia. Some of them now even go to, is it Ukraine? They go to Ukraine too. They go to other parts of the world. And many of them will not return. The thing that I observe also is that when they make that trip, it's their mothers that follow them. You won't see fathers inside the aircraft. If you're a father, you are following your child, you will be like a fish out of water. It's only mothers that go abroad. Mothers, you are going to enjoy very soon. After collecting our money to take children abroad.
I just love
Nobody is looking at that angle.
I love the fact that you always express the true source of your upset. I like the fact that you don't try and pretend that it's anything but you be the hater, Dr. Abasi. Don't hate the brothers. You have to congratulate. Allow them.
Yes,
but I just think it's a sad statement about this country and what the economy has done to families. You talked about Bismarck Rwani's interview, what the energy situation, for me, that's the rock. Then the hard place is foreign exchange problems, what that's doing to businesses. When people cannot make money in their businesses, what happens to their marriages? That kind of tension, this is how you get domestic violence, and that's how you get divorce. You get all kinds of other societal ills, like adultery, because a lot of people are making prostitutes of themselves because the ends just are not meeting. It's an attack on the family. And you also have this point that you just mentioned, children going off. When we were younger in Nigeria, you had grandparents with the whole brood of grandchildren. But now most of the children live abroad with their children. You have the grandparents, FaceTiming grandchildren. That's the reality here. When people are older, they're more vulnerable. Blessed is he or she who has a child who can actually take them to their hospital appointments here in Nigeria. Because most of the children are all the way in Canada, and all they can do is use their phone and keep in touch. It's just so tragic how the family, the very fiber, the fabric of our society has completely been attacked by the way things are in this country.
Tough stuff. It's tough.
I just hope they're listening. Those vying to be Nigeria's next president.
And also those voting for who will be Nigeria's next president. Those
we
people as well.
Like
Yeah,
we cannot continue.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so
the
much.
Director is shouting in the background. He's saying we need to go. We need to go.
So off we go.